Fiancé cheated, got pregnant, and blamed my childhood ex. Now I'm the villain for not forgiving her. I've been scrolling through posts for a few days now, searching for advice on how to handle my situation. Honestly, I'm not sure if this is the right place to post, but I'm new to Reddit and just trying to find some guidance from folks who've been through something similar. Before I dive in, let me apologize for any mistakes in my writing. English isn't my first language since I'm originally from France. Anyway, here's the deal. 2 weeks ago, I found out that my fiancée, Ashley, cheated on me with her ex. Her reason? She felt insecure because of my ex, Tasha. If you ask me, it's the dumbest excuse I've ever heard, but somehow, everyone around us seems to agree with her. They're all pushing me to forgive her, and I honestly need to hear what unbiased people think. I'll give you some background on my situation. It's a bit of a long story. Tasha and I go way back. We met when we were just 3 years old. Her mom worked as a nanny and looked after a bunch of kids, including me. We hit it off so well that our moms became friends and even enrolled us in the same school. From then on, we were inseparable. People used to call us the twins because we were always together. Sure, we bickered sometimes, but when it came to other kids, we stood as a team. This bond made us outcasts in a way, but we didn't care as long as we had each other. By the time we were 11, our families decided our closeness wasn't healthy. They wanted us to make other friends. Ironically, that's when we realized we were in love. But our families were old school. She's of Arab descent, and I'm African, so we had to keep our relationship a secret. Things took a turn when I was 13. I snuck into Tasha's room one night through her window. I'd done it a few times before. We'd just talk and kiss a bit. But that night, her dad burst into the room and caught us. He was furious and even threatened to call the cops. I panicked, tried to climb back out the window, and ended up falling and breaking my arm. It caused a huge scene. The neighbors were out, gossiping like crazy, and her dad wanted to press charges. Even though I was just a kid and wouldn't have faced serious consequences, it was humiliating for my family. My dad decided enough was enough and sent me to Africa to live there indefinitely, partly to separate us. Adjusting to life in Africa wasn't easy, and Tasha struggled too. We managed to stay in touch online though, and when I came back to France after high school, it was like no time had passed. We picked up right where we left off, secretly dating. By the time we were 20, we were convinced we'd spend our lives together. But we underestimated how tough it would be. When we finally told our families we wanted to get married, it was like setting off a bomb. Both sides wanted us to marry within our own cultures, and it caused endless drama. The neighborhood buzzed with gossip, like always. We tried to hold on for a year, but the pressure was suffocating. Tasha wanted us to move to another city, far away from Paris and our families, to finish our studies and start fresh. But my dad was sick at the time, so I decided to stay. After he passed away, I didn't have the energy to keep fighting. I broke up with her, and she moved away to another city. We completely lost touch after that. I couldn't stand the constant whispers about us in the neighborhood anymore, so I moved to my university's student residence. It was a rough year for me. I visited my family on weekends, and at one wedding, I met Ashley. Her family had just moved into the neighborhood. We were seated at the same table, and we spent the night joking around and swapping stories. I told her about Tasha, and she shared her own heartbreak. She'd broken up with her ex of 2 years because he wanted to sleep together before marriage, but she wasn't ready. She told him to marry her if he couldn't wait, but he wasn't prepared for that, so she ended it. Ashley and I bonded over our shared pain and eventually became friends. We started hanging out, but I noticed she'd get irritated whenever I mentioned Tasha, so I stopped bringing her up. One day, Ashley admitted she had feelings for me. I told her I still had Tasha in my heart, but she said dating her might help me move on. I decided to give it a shot. At first, it felt strange being with someone else, but over time, I got used to it and began to enjoy being with Ashley. As we grew closer, her jealousy of Tasha started showing in odd ways. Even though I never talked about Tasha anymore, the neighborhood gossip kept dredging up old stories. People would retell the infamous incident with the broken arm and other memories. Ashley hated being compared to Tasha, especially since Tasha was undeniably beautiful. I always told Ashley she was the most beautiful woman in my eyes because she was the one who mattered now. But she couldn't let go of the comparisons, constantly wondering if I'd done certain things with Tasha before doing them with her. What really drove Ashley over the edge was knowing I'd been intimate with Tasha. Her insecurity became a constant weight on our relationship, but despite it all, I asked her to marry me. She came from the same culture as me, which made things easier with my family. Honestly, I didn't have the energy to fight that battle all over again. We planned to get married in August, which seemed perfect since I'd be done with my studies in July. For a while, everything seemed fine except for her occasional jealousy until 2 weeks ago. That's when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. On the other end was a guy who introduced himself as her ex. He claimed that he and Ashley had been seeing each other and had even slept together multiple times. At first, I didn't believe him. I figured he was just trying to ruin our relationship. But then he sent me screenshots of their conversations. I dismissed them as easily faked and brushed him off. He insisted we meet in person, though, to prove he wasn't lying. I thought about warning Ashley, but I decided to meet him first. To be safe, I brought 2 friends along, just in case it was some kind of setup. When we met, he showed me everything, his phone, the messages, and Ashley's number. It all checked out. They'd been seeing each other for 2 months, and she had only ended things with him a week before he contacted me. I called Ashley right away and told her we needed to talk. Oddly enough, I didn't feel angry. It was like I was watching someone else's life play out on a screen. A friend of mine suggested I record our conversation, so I did. When I confronted her, she looked completely shocked. At first, she denied everything and claimed her ex was just trying to break us up. But then I showed her the screenshots. She used the same argument I had earlier, that they could be faked. That's when I told her I'd met with him and seen the messages on his phone, including details about our relationship that he couldn't have known otherwise. That's when she broke down, crying and begging for forgiveness. We were at her house, in her room, and her family came in to see what was going on. I explained the situation, but they didn't believe me. I didn't bother trying to convince them and left. Before I even got back to my parents' house, Ashley's family had already called mine to tell them their version of events. When I got home, I explained everything to my mom. Apparently, Ashley told them she'd only cheated because I was secretly seeing Tasha again, which wasn't true. She even claimed Tasha had recently come back to town, which I hadn't known. Suddenly, Ashley was the victim, and Tasha and I were painted as the villains. I was furious and decided to cut off contact with everyone. For the past 10 days, I haven't spoken to anyone in the neighborhood. I've been staying with a friend from school, and no one knows where I am. I turned off my phone and only communicate with my mom through email. Ashley's been bombarding me with emails too, but I delete them all without reading a word. That's the gist of it. I'm at a loss about what to do next. Everyone's urging me to forgive her, but I can't see any way to do that. All I feel when I think about her is disgust. I just don't know how to move forward or handle this mess. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. Hi, everyone. It's been a while since my first post. I can't thank you all enough for the support I've received through DMs, it's meant a lot to me. For those who missed the first part, I've linked it above for context. The fallout from everything landed right before my final exams, so I went into autopilot mode, focusing solely on my studies. Honestly, that focus was a blessing in disguise, it helped me block everything else out. I'm happy to share that I'm officially an engineer now. Since the confrontation, I've stayed completely no contact with Ashley, her family, my family, and anyone else who tried to meddle in my business. But once my exams were over and I came back to my apartment, the weight of it all hit me like a tidal wave. I felt completely drained and abandoned. I was so anxious about the messages I'd see if I turned on my phone that I couldn't bring myself to do it. That night, my mind kept replaying memories of me and Ashley. Strangely, they weren't the bad moments but the good ones, times we cuddled, kissed, or just shared quiet moments together. Instead of comfort, those memories made me feel filthy, like I couldn't scrub off the stain of her betrayal. I scratched at my skin until it burned, then took a shower, hoping it would make me feel clean again. I ended up doing that twice that evening. Even my bed felt tainted, a reminder of all the nights we'd spent together. I couldn't sleep on it, so I laid down on the floor instead. The next day, every time the memories came flooding back, I'd scratch at myself and shower again. By the end of the day, I'd done it 8 times. Now, I'm trying to keep it down to 3 or 4 times a day, but I'm worried about damaging my skin. Has anyone else experienced something like this? I hope it's not some kind of compulsive mental issue. Eventually, I turned on my phone, and as expected, there were over 200 messages and countless voicemails waiting for me. I didn't read or listen to any of them. I deleted everything. I just didn't have the strength to deal with the same tired arguments all over again. I decided it was time to stop hiding. I went to my family's house, knowing it would be a stressful ordeal. When I arrived, I found my uncle, my dad's brother and the self-proclaimed head of the family, along with his wife, whom I'll just call the witch because, well, she is one, their kids, a few family friends, and my younger siblings, 13M, 9M, and 5F. Strangely, my mom wasn't there. As soon as I arrived, my uncle immediately started yelling at me. I didn't even acknowledge him at first, just seeing my little sister running to me for a hug was enough to melt some of the stress. God, I love that little girl. All my siblings look up to me as a role model, and I felt so guilty for cutting them off all this time. Usually, when I'm home on weekends, I help with their homework, tuck the youngest into bed, and tell them stories my father used to share with me. When I'm at my apartment, we make it a habit to talk every night about their day. We're really close, and being apart from them hurt. But my uncle wouldn't stop yelling. I was sitting in the middle of the living room, feeling like I was on trial in front of a jury. My uncle kept asking if I'd regained my sanity. Apparently, Marie had changed her story again. This time, she claimed she hadn't slept with her ex but that they'd only kissed. She said the pressure I put on her during our confrontation had made her confess to something she didn't do. I knew what I saw on her ex's phone. At that moment, it hit me how manipulative Marie had become. How could someone hide such a vicious nature for so long? Or was I just too blind to see it? When we first started dating, she told me that lying was her biggest deal breaker and that what she hated most in the world were narcissistic manipulators. And yet, here she was, embodying everything she claimed to despise. At that point, I didn't care anymore. I told everyone present what I'd been through and said they had a choice: believe the person they'd known their whole lives or someone they'd known for barely over a year. My uncle tried to defend her, saying it was impossible because Marie was such a sweet and loving girl who helps the community and even volunteers. I shot back that Hitler probably volunteered at some point too, so that wasn't exactly a compelling argument. Then my uncle had the audacity to tell me that if it was true Marie had slept with her ex, I'd have the right to end the relationship, as though I needed his permission. Before I could respond, his wife, whom I've nicknamed the witch for obvious reasons, chimed in, saying it didn't matter whether it was true. According to her, it would have just been a mistake by a young girl. My uncle immediately changed his stance to agree with her, which didn't surprise me. He's the biggest doormat I've ever met. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the witch had cheated on him and he knew about it. He's probably too scared of her to do anything. He's much smaller than her, and if you saw them walking hand in hand at night, you'd think she was escorting a child. Then the witch accused me of lying and said this was all because of Samia. I stayed calm and told her I hadn't spoken to Samia in over 2 years. My uncle pressed me, saying that if Samia wasn't involved, I could easily forgive Marie. I couldn't take it anymore. I told him, okay, I'll forgive Marie if you let me sleep with your wife for 2 months. Chaos erupted. My uncle lunged at me, but family friends held him back. I called them all hypocrites, saying they expected me to forgive something they couldn't even imagine forgiving themselves. Then I made it clear that I wouldn't let anyone interfere in my life anymore. The witch started crying, and my uncle declared that he would never forgive me and that I was dead to them. In that moment, I didn't care. I went upstairs to my room, which I still had at my family's house. As I sat there, I felt a twinge of regret. After all, they're still my family. But then doubt crept in. What if what Marie's ex showed me wasn't as reliable as I thought? For a moment, I wondered if I could forgive her if it really was just a kiss. The answer came quickly: no. Never. When I was little, our neighbor used to take care of me after school when my parents were busy with work. He had 2 kids in my school, and I'd stay at his house until the evening. He treated me like one of his own, giving me candy and small gifts. I loved that man like family. He was kind, respected by everyone. And then, one day, he committed suicide because his wife had an affair. That's what cheating can do to someone. A year later, his wife moved to Canada with her kids and the man she had the affair with. Maybe my hatred of cheating stems from that tragedy. Whatever the reason, I decided I wasn't going to burn myself out trying to make others comfortable by reconciling with Marie. I still don't understand why everyone is pushing so hard for me to get back with her or how it benefits them. Later, my mom came home. I assume someone told her what had happened. She came straight to my room, hugged me, and asked how I was feeling and how my finals went. My mom isn't the type to express love with words, she shows it through actions. I remember a few years ago when I was working at a fast food place while studying. I'd come home around 2 a.m., and she'd always be awake, waiting for me. She'd reheat dinner and sit with me for small talks while I ate. Even after everything, she's the one person I can always count on. That night, my mom and I shared a rare moment of laughter so intense, we struggled to keep quiet. It felt like a brief escape from the chaos of the past weeks. Eventually, our conversation turned to what happened with my uncle and his wife. For the first time, I gave her the full version of why I had to break up with Marie. Until then, she only knew that Marie had cheated, but not to what extent. Like everyone else, she assumed it was just a kiss. Hearing the whole truth, my mom was heartbroken for me. What truly shocked me was seeing her cry. It was the first time in my life I had seen her shed tears. Even when my dad passed away, she kept smiling, stayed strong, and became the anchor we all needed. I later learned she would cry in the quiet of her room at night when she thought no one else could hear. Watching her cry broke something in me, and I couldn't hold back my own tears. She hugged me as I crumbled under the weight of everything: sadness, anger, hurt, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal. She reassured me in her quiet, unshakable way that she would stand by whatever decision I made. After that, she went back downstairs to talk to the rest of the family, who eventually left. I didn't ask what she said to them, and honestly, I didn't care. I turned off my phone for the next week, unable to handle more calls, messages, or drama. Instead, I focused on catching up on sleep, spending time with my siblings, gaming with them, and just trying to process everything. During that time, Marie's parents called my mom several times. She didn't mention it until she thought I was in a better place to hear it. Apparently, Marie had been hospitalized and was spiraling mentally after I went no contact. Her parents begged my mom to convince me to meet with them and Marie. Even though my mom made it clear I didn't have to, I eventually agreed. The meeting was set for Saturday. I decided it was time for me to tell my side of the story. Marie had controlled the narrative for too long. I wasn't sure whether to have them come to my house or to meet at theirs, but either way, I resolved to be ready. Meanwhile, someone from my last post suggested reaching out to Marie's affair partner, AP, and pretending to consider reconciling with her if I didn't have enough proof. I decided to give it a shot. Yesterday, I called AP and arranged to meet him on Sunday. He said there was more to the story than I knew, but he wouldn't send me proof because he was worried I might show it to Marie and ruin his chances of getting back with her. Instead, he promised to tell me everything in person. On another note, people kept asking about Samia. As I mentioned before, I planned to reach out to her to apologize for her name being dragged into this mess, even though it wasn't my fault. Before I could, she sent me an email. It wasn't what I expected. She was furious, demanding to know why people kept accusing her of breaking up my relationship. Still, she was kind enough to ask how I was doing in all this chaos. I saw her email 2 days ago but haven't replied yet. I don't even know what to say. My mind feels numb, like I'm just moving through the motions one step at a time. Update. Yesterday, I met with Marie's AP. We sat down at the same place as before, and I made sure to record everything. His story was shocking. According to him, he and Marie dated on and off for 4 years. She was never the virgin she claimed to be, and he wasn't even her first partner. Despite Marie cheating on him twice, he was still deeply in love with her and willing to work through it. At one point during their relationship, Marie got pregnant but didn't know who the father was. AP was ready to raise the child as his own and refused to do a paternity test. However, her parents found out about the pregnancy and pressured her to have an abortion. Under the stress, Marie had a miscarriage. She became severely depressed, and her family decided to relocate to give her a fresh start. It was during this time, AP said, that Marie created her born-again virgin persona. She viewed the miscarriage as punishment for her past actions and wanted to reinvent herself. She broke up with him, but they stayed friends. While AP couldn't provide proof of this part of their history, he said he changed phones since then. He showed me text messages between them during my relationship with Marie. In those conversations, Marie confided in him about our relationship. She told him she'd met someone, me, who embodied the kind of old-fashioned romance she had always dreamed of. But as time went on, she also shared her doubts and insecurities. AP told me things about my relationship with Marie that only she and I could have known. According to him, Marie didn't love me as a person. She loved the idea of me, a symbol of the stability and devotion she craved but didn't know how to truly connect with. Hearing all of this filled me with a growing anger that I'm not comfortable with. I don't want to be this person, but the more I learn, the harder it is to stay calm. At this point, I've decided not to meet Marie's family. I don't know if they were complicit in her lies from the start, but it doesn't matter anymore. What's clear is that I'm done. Done with her, done with their drama, and done being the person they think they can manipulate. I've been torn about what to do with the evidence I have. Part of me wants to send it to everyone in our social circle, to clear my name and let the truth be known. It feels so unfair that I, someone who was born and raised in this neighborhood, have to bear the consequences of Marie's lies and deceit. But I don't want to stoop to that level. Out of respect for Marie's parents, I've decided to send the evidence to them first and ask for an explanation. I'll wait to decide on my next steps after hearing their response. To everyone who has supported me in the comments or through DMs, thank you. Your advice and kind words have meant so much, especially as I've felt my sanity slipping. Reading about others who endured years of betrayal, often with children involved, gives me perspective and a strange sort of courage. This might be my last update if nothing new happens, so I want to wish strength and healing to everyone struggling through infidelity. Update 3. I hadn't planned to write another update, but so many people reached out asking what happened, I felt I owed it to you. First, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I wasn't in a good place then, but I read every single word, and it helped me more than I can express. So, did I meet with Marie and her family? Yes, I did. The meeting took place at my house with my mom present. Beforehand, I sent a long audio message to Marie's parents detailing everything I'd learned from her affair partner, AP. I told them I was tired of being painted as the villain while she played the victim. I made it clear there was no chance of salvaging the relationship, but if the rumors and lies didn't stop, I was prepared to expose Marie to our social circle. I also said I was canceling the meeting unless she came clean. Marie's mother called me immediately, saying Marie had confessed everything to them. She claimed Marie had deleted her posts and admitted the truth on all her social media accounts. Since I don't use Snapchat or Instagram, I couldn't verify this myself, so I reached out to a mutual friend. To my surprise, it was true, Marie had come clean. I felt trapped by my own ultimatum. I had expected Marie to avoid taking responsibility, given how much appearances matter in her traditional family. But with no way out, I honored the meeting. I thought seeing Marie again would be unbearable, considering how much pain her betrayal caused me. Memories of our time together often made me physically restless, to the point where I found myself scratching at my skin. I was sure being face to face with her would be too much. But when we met, it wasn't as overwhelming as I'd feared. Marie looked like a shadow of herself. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight in such a short time and seemed deeply sad and lost. She couldn't even meet my eyes or say a word to me. The meeting began with small talk, but it quickly shifted when her mother started pleading with me to take her back. She blamed Marie's insecurity for her actions, trying to justify her deceit. I had prepared myself for this. I stayed focused and stuck to the questions I wanted answered. The first thing I asked was why Marie lied about her past and pretended to be someone she wasn't. Marie immediately broke into tears and avoided looking at me. Her mother answered for her, saying Marie had always been judged harshly for her past and asked if I would have dated her if I had known the truth. I told her that what-ifs didn't matter. The only reality was that Marie had chosen to lie, and her lies had brought us to this moment. In this reality, I had been in a relationship with someone who didn't exist. I couldn't trust anything she'd ever told me. The discussion went around in circles, with her parents defending her and Marie remaining silent. At one point, seeing how firm I was in my decision, they asked me to postpone the wedding and take the summer to think things over. Their request caught me off guard. I didn't know how to respond. My mom, who had been silent up to that point, stepped in. She said she had already spoken with me and knew I'd made up my mind. She told them that even if I changed my mind in the future, she would advise against it but would still support my decision. She made it clear that this meeting was about closure, not reconciliation. She also mentioned how deeply this situation had affected me, pointing out my sleeplessness and even joking about my scratching habit, which brought a brief, awkward silence to the room. Eventually, Marie spoke up, asking to talk to me in private. She promised it wasn't to convince me to change my mind, only to accept my decision. I reluctantly agreed, but I didn't feel comfortable being alone with her in a room, so we went for a walk outside instead. We walked in silence for about half an hour. It was the first time I saw her so vulnerable, finally taking accountability for her actions. She admitted to having a promiscuous past. She explained that there was no traumatic event to justify it. She grew up in a loving family. She believed it was just her nature. She started having sex at 12, had multiple partners by 15, and by 18, she had already slept with 40 people, eventually losing count. She confessed that before meeting me, she had never truly known love. She used sex as a way to feel loved and to seek validation. With AP, she experienced being loved deeply for the first time but realized she couldn't return his feelings in the same way. She continued seeking intimacy with others because, for her, love seemed to exist only in the act itself. Yet afterward, all that remained was a profound sense of emptiness. Eventually, she got pregnant and started loving her unborn child. But after suffering a miscarriage, she began to question her entire life. Her family moved to a new area to give her a fresh start. She ended things with AP, acknowledging she didn't love him, even though she valued his kindness and their friendship. They remained in touch, but nothing more. She revealed something unexpected about how she had heard of me even before we met. It was through a fast food restaurant I used to frequent with Samia. The owner's son, a friend, often took photos of loyal customers and displayed them on the restaurant's walls. Among them were 2 pictures of me and Samia, one when we were 11 and another when we were 19. The 19-year-old photo, in particular, had a story that everyone in the neighborhood knew. It was my birthday, and Samia, born in September, had worked all summer to make it unforgettable. She rented a tuxedo for me, wore a stunning evening dress, and even arranged for a limo. The limo picked me up in front of my house, promising a dream evening. But barely 200 meters later, the limo stopped in front of the modest fast food place. I was embarrassed, having dressed up so formally only to end up there. But that was her humor, and it worked. We ordered kebabs, shared a muffin with a candle on it, and laughed. The owner snapped a picture, capturing the moment. When Marie heard about that story, she was intrigued. She wanted to experience that kind of love. When she discovered I was the guy in the photo, she became even more curious. Intimidated by the story she had heard, she began lying about her past, believing the truth would make me reject her. Over time, as she grew attached to me, the lies snowballed, and she felt trapped, unable to undo them. She told me she discovered a new kind of love with me, a love that didn't require intimacy to feel real. But her lies and feelings of unworthiness fed her insecurities. She began to sabotage our relationship, returning to her demons and eventually cheating on me with AP. She admitted that the reality of what she had done hit her hard when I found out. She became desperate to keep me in her life, turning into someone she didn't recognize. She made excuses, tried to guilt me into staying, and even ended up in the hospital after a breakdown. She told me she no longer wanted to live, not because she had lost me, but because she couldn't bear the person she had become. She didn't want to force me to stay but hoped for my forgiveness to help her heal. She had started therapy to understand her actions and figure out who she truly was. She acknowledged it would be a long process but asked if I could find compassion to forgive her and help her become a better person. Hearing her request, I felt a strange empathy for her despite all the pain she caused. I almost agreed to stay in touch to support her. But deep down, I knew the feelings I once had for her were gone. I explained that I needed distance to heal and told her she needed to face her journey alone. I assured her it was the only way she could truly grow. She admitted she had expected that answer but said she would regret not trying. She accepted my decision, though she also said she wasn't giving up on me. She promised to work on herself, believing we might reconnect someday. I didn't tell her I could never be with someone who had cheated on me. Instead, I said I had moved on and didn't want to give her false hope. The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that. Her parents contacted her to let her know they were home, so I walked her back to her house. Before leaving, I told her that I would be going no contact, as it was the only healthy way for me to heal. She agreed, though she admitted it would be difficult since we lived in the same neighborhood and might run into each other occasionally. She asked me for one final hug, and I obliged. Afterward, I left feeling surprisingly lighter. The conversation had lifted a weight off my shoulders. I held no more anger toward her. I understand that healing isn't linear, and these feelings might resurface in the future, but for now, I feel at peace. That's essentially how the meeting ended. As for whether I met Samia, yes, I did meet her twice. However, I'm not sure if this is the right place to share those details. Perhaps I'll do one final update before heading off for my summer vacation for those interested in how things unfolded and what lies ahead for me. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. It's meant a lot to me.